Hello and welcome to Hot and Heavy, the Elaine Bennis podcast. I'm your host, Shivani Desai. Today I'll be talking about Season 3, Episode 4, The Dog. Hello everyone. How's everyone doing out there? Hope you're good. I'm okay. Well, not as excited as I was last week. I think last week you could describe me as being very giddy about the pen episode, but this one I'm not as excited about. Other than being really meh about this episode, I've been a little bit kind of in a funk for this last week or so. We're in this kind of dead time for auditions in this area, so I just had figured out over the last week, I'm like, my gosh, I haven't sent in a self-tape for like a month, and nothing's come through for me to submit to. And yeah, I just got a little bit... I just let my mind wander a bit too much about that. Am I dead in this town? Did I do something? You know, you just always make it about you, well, at least I do, and think that it's your fault and that all of a sudden nobody wants to cast you in anything. So I went down that road for a little bit, and then, I pulled myself out, mostly because I talked to my agent, I talked to some other actors, and they were like, no, it's totally dead right now. It should pick up soon. And then I got a couple auditions that I have to submit for by the end of this week. So, you know what? I was worrying for nothing. All right, so let's get into this episode. The synopsis from my coffee table book is as follows. When a drunken airline passenger suffers an attack, Jerry gets stuck looking after his uncooperative dog, Farfel, for a week. With Jerry unable to leave the house, Elaine and George see a movie together and realize they have nothing in common but Jerry. Jerry and Elaine diss Kramer's ex-girlfriend, but their words come back to haunt them after Kramer gets back together with her. Wow, they really used the word diss. They dissed her. Oh my goodness. This episode was written by Larry David. The first scene, we start out in the airplane. There's no Elaine in this scene, but just to cover it real quick, this drunk guy is talking way too close to Jerry. Clearly, he's smelly. Jerry seems to be struggling for air as he's talking to him. Talking about his dog, how much he loves it. Oh, and he's in the baggage compartment. Jerry asks about, well, what about picking up their little poo? You know, how do you find that enriching? All of a sudden, the man starts having chest pains and they have to make an emergency landing. But what about my dog? Do you know anyone on the plane, sir? Jerry, can you take care of Farfel? So Jerry is stuck with Farfel the dog. The next scene is in Jerry's apartment. He's dealing with terrible Farfel who just won't stop barking, which apparently is a man. I saw in the notes about nothing, I'm just going to jump ahead here because there's really barely anything in the notes about nothing, but they had auditioned 4 voice actors to be Farfel. And yeah, so that is actually a man barking as Farfel. So Elaine is just enjoying how much Jerry is suffering with this dog. And she asks, when you walk him, do you pick it up? Jerry says, of course you have to. You pick it up. Oh boy, would I love to see that. Elaine is also busy making an egg cream at the counter. Jerry's just wondering, where is he? It's been a week. I can't believe it. I'm stuck with this dog. He's probably on a bender. He's drunk. Kramer enters. He says, I can't watch the dog tonight. But we're going to the movies. Nope, he's breaking up with Ellen, his girlfriend. Oh, and then right away, Jerry and Elaine just kind of lay into her, saying, I don't know how you put up with her. She was terrible. If you could see her personality, it would be like the Elephant Man exhibit where everyone gasps when they take the sheet off. And Jerry says, I can't believe no one's killed her yet. George buzzes, prognosis negative. And Elaine's nervous. She says, just me and George? But we need you. We're like friends-in-law. Just put some newspapers down. Jerry says, absolutely not. George enters. He's very excited about this movie. And then finds out, well, Jerry's not going to go. And he says, well, you two can go. And they immediately feel awkward. You still want to go? Well, if you want to. Well, it's up to you. Elaine really wants to see prognosis negative with Jerry, so maybe they can see Ponce de Leon? And then Elaine just gets this idea. Okay, how about we all go? I come back first. I clean everything up. I open the windows. No, Jerry says. And he says, you'll have a good time. No, it's not that. We just want you to go. Well, that's very sweet. The purpose of this scene, we see what a nightmare Farfel is and how Kramer canceling on them will affect their plans for the night. Elaine and George, just the idea of going out without Jerry, just the two of them, that's not something that they're a fan of. Overall, it's fine. It's good organic exposition, introduces all the plots, the plot of Jerry dealing with Farfel, Elaine and George feeling uncomfortable, spending time alone without Jerry, and Kramer breaking up with this girlfriend, Ellen. I like how amused Elaine is that Jerry has to pick up poop. And, it's really because she knows his ways and how everything has to be just so. And so really understanding that about him, she knows how miserable Farfel is making him, and that's fun for her. And I appreciate how it's fun for Elaine to see this. And I have to mention what JLD is dealing with making this egg cream, like the blocking of all of that activity, that's pretty intense. I mean, everything from pouring the milk and the syrup and then the vintage seltzer bottle that was particularly intense with this siphon. And I looked up how to make an egg cream and she does it exactly right. I know they debated about what to put in first, milk or syrup. It seems like it's just a personal preference, but you really have to keep it moving as you put the seltzer in it. And which Elaine does do. So I'm really fascinated that they made her do such an involved action while the scene was going on. And an egg cream. I'm mildly curious to try one. I don't know if I ever will, but it sounds intriguing. A fizzy chocolate milk, I guess. Jerry and Elaine telling Kramer the truth about his girlfriend. That is great writing. I love that. It's very simple, but I love JLD's delivery with the personality being like the Elephant Man. Everybody gasps. It's really good. I can't believe no one's killed her yet. It's just so simple. Very Larry David. I can see him saying that in Curb. And it's so, like I said, it's just a simple couple pieces of dialogue. But I really enjoyed just that expression of how much they could not stand this woman. Once Jerry pulls out of going to the movie, you really feel how bummed Elaine and George are. But they don't want to be rude to each other about it and bail on each other. And there is a continuity issue here. They did have an outing, just the two of them, before this, when George enlisted Elaine to help him poison his boss. And, maybe because that was a very planned thing and not just a casual outing, it was more tolerable for them. But I just have a feeling the writers didn't care about that. And they just said, well, the audience won't remember. There's never going to be a thing where people watch this over and over again. So we'll just have this be a new thing for them hanging out together. And I think the George and Elaine plot is a relatable one. I'll forgive it that the continuity is a little bit off, but it's relatable. I know I have been a part of friend groups where I sort of need a buffer or have felt like a friend-in-law of sorts, but I don't think I've ever made a transition from a friend-in-law to an actual friend. I've seen it happen with other people, but I don't think I've ever had that happen. It just usually fades out if the person who is linking us isn't in the equation anymore. So I was also not very good at keeping relationships alive either. So that's a whole other issue that I have had to deal with in my life. All right, the next scene, well, I'm calling it the next scene, but it's sort of this, we're bouncing around to different scenes. We're in Monk's with George and Elaine having an awkward chat at a table having tea. Meanwhile, Jerry is yelling at the dog. Kramer is breaking up with the girlfriend. And we're seeing it from the point of view of the girlfriend. Back at Monk's, George mentions he likes herbal tea, chamomile, lemon lift, almond pleasure. Elaine is just squeezing the tea bag. You just can hear the awkwardness. All you can hear is the drip, drip, drip. And then she mentions that Jerry likes morning thunder. He likes morning thunder? That has caffeine. Jerry doesn't drink caffeine. Jerry doesn't know morning thunder has caffeine. And then they both have a great laugh because Elaine does an impression of how Jerry has no idea it's the caffeine, but he gets all hyper. God, I feel great. And then they talk about him throwing up. Have you ever seen him throw up? Oh, 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 oh. We go back to Kramer. He takes it all back. I love you. And then Jerry finds out by calling the hospital that Gavin Polone has been released. Purpose of this scene, we are seeing everyone's experience, all the cast members, what's going on at the same time. And overall, I like the monk scene the best. Jason Alexander and JLD do a really good job here, acting super awkward and then just turning the mood when the conversation turns to Jerry. And of course, talking about the one thing that they have in common would totally be entertaining. Now, the setup of George and Elaine in Monks with this awkwardness, it's the same setup and the same positioning as he and Susan when in a much later episode when they're talking about shoelaces. I don't know if that was on purpose, but I noticed that. I was like, this feels very familiar. And maybe that's their go-to for awkward conversation blocking. I don't know. But I just noticed that parallel where I was like, this feels very familiar. The tone, the way they're sitting. And sure enough, it was the awkwardness with Susan much later. Okay, and so are we to understand from what is revealed in this scene that Jerry only drinks decaf coffee? George says he doesn't drink caffeine, and yet Jerry drinks coffee all the time. I don't know if this comes up again, but it seems like an odd character trait that just doesn't fit with Jerry, since coffee is like his thing. And I know it's not true to life because, he has a show called Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. And in that show, in many episodes, he's talked about how he could have coffee any time of the day and the caffeine doesn't affect him. He could have it right before bed even. It doesn't even faze him. And I really remember it in the Sarah Jessica Parker episode because while they're having lunch in this diner, I think he has like his fourth refill for coffee and she is just like, how can you have that much caffeine? And he's like, it doesn't affect me. She's like, oh my God, I would have terrible anxiety if I drank that much coffee. So it's not true to life. I don't know why they chose to make it a thing in this episode. But yeah, I was kind of like, well, is it only decaf coffee? I can't imagine. The next scene, we're in Jerry's apartment. Elaine is cleaning the carpet and talking to Jerry about how uncomfortable it was with George the previous night. And the only time that it wasn't uncomfortable was when they were talking and making fun of Jerry. George calls. He wants to make extra sure that they're all going to the movies that night. Yes, I'm going, Jerry says. Elaine is really upset that Jerry's going to take Farfel to the pound. You know what happens? They keep them there for a week and then they kill them. Jerry's not fazed. He says, how long are they open? Kramer walks in. Yeah, he's back with Ellen. Jerry and Elaine fake happiness, and Kramer's like, do you think I forgot what you said? No, from now on, when I pass you in the hall, I don't know you, you don't know me. He walks out, he's upset, and then they sort of review what they said about Ellen, and I believe I said her personality was like a science experiment. I said I couldn't believe no one had killed her. And Jerry says we probably shouldn't have said anything. Everyone knows the first breakup never takes. George buzzes. Elaine begs Jerry again, just please wait one more day. And Jerry says no. So then Elaine can't take it. She offers to watch the dog. And they'll see prognosis negative on Sunday. George is, of course, upset about that. But that's the plan. Elaine's going to stay. But then Jerry has to use the bathroom. George and Elaine immediately panic. They don't want Jerry leaving the room. There's more awkward silence. And Elaine says, hey, you know what he does in there? Gargles. He does it like 6 times a day. How come we don't hear anything? He does it quietly. And then Elaine demonstrates. They laugh again. Then George mentions the throwing up again. And she says, we've already talked about that. They've already run out of things to talk about with Jerry. The purpose of the scene, moving all the plots forward. Jerry's had it with the dog, taking it to the pound. Elaine is upset and bothered that she and George have nothing to talk about unless they're making fun of Jerry. And, Kramer is very mad at Elaine and Jerry for what they said about Ellen. My overall take, first of all, why the hell is Elaine cleaning what I assume is dog pee or poop off of the carpet? It's so weird and very off-putting to me. Why is she cleaning it? And Elaine being upset about the pound, that's very early Elaine. I mean, we all know how Elaine gets along with dogs later in the series. It's not a great relationship. So this feels very early Elaine when she's like, you can't take him to the pound. After Kramer leaves upset, I do love that moment where they review what they said about Ellen. And that comment that Jerry said, we probably shouldn't have said anything at all. Everyone knows the first breakup doesn't take. I couldn't help but think that this was maybe a good opportunity for Jerry and Elaine to have a moment about their own failed first breakup, but instead it was just sort of glossed over. And I mean, it didn't have to be anything like super significant, but a small recognition of how they briefly got back together would have been kind of nice, though I'm sure they were just hoping the audience forgot all about it. I like how George says, what does this mean? After Elaine says she's staying with the dog. Well, what does that mean for prognosis negative? Well, it means that prognosis negative is out for he and Jerry. Jerry, promised to see it with Elaine. And the panic about Jerry going to the bathroom is really funny. We know what Elaine and George are fearing, and that gargling quietly bit, that was good. I liked how much they enjoyed that. And then George bringing up Jerry's way of throwing up, that was a great way of saying, gosh, we really cannot rely on this to be our way of getting along without Jerry in the room. It's not enough material. All right, the next scene, again, it's this kind of moving back and forth between George and Jerry in line for the movie and Elaine with Farfel back at the apartment. They're seeing Ponce de Leon is sold out, so the only thing that they could see is prognosis negative. Elaine, meanwhile, is fighting with Farfel, answers the phone, and it's the dog guy. Where have you been? You better pick up your dog or he's humped his last leg. Finally, Jerry says, you know what? What is this? It's not like she's in the movie. I mean, what is all this? I can't control these circumstances. So they end up getting 2 tickets for prognosis negative. And right away, Jerry knows I'm in big trouble. Oh, you're dead. Purpose of this scene, Jerry and George end up seeing prognosis negative, and Elaine hates Farfel just as much as Jerry. Overall, it's fine. It's a good bit of comedy for JLD here with the dog, and that's kind of all I have to say about that. The next scene, there's no Elaine, but it's Gavin Polone finally picking up Farfel. He had Bell's palsy, and he's lying about it all. And then Kramer enters and gets yelled at by Ellen. The next scene, and we're back in Jerry's place. It's the last scene of the episode. Elaine's just like, well, I thought you wanted to see prognosis negative. And Jerry's not wanting to go because of, obviously, he's already seen it. It turns out it's really, really bad. And Elaine says, well, you promised you'd go. And he says, I almost feel like I've seen it, And she said, wait, George saw the movie? I saw him yesterday. He didn't mention anything. And right away, Jerry's like, you saw George yesterday? I had to get together with him. I wanted to talk about how we had nothing to talk about. Kramer comes in. He broke up with Ellen. All's good. The purpose of this scene, the resolution to it all. Jerry hated prognosis negative, but he can't tell Elaine. So he has to see it again. Kramer's not mad anymore. He dumped Ellen for good. And overall, the mentioning of Elaine and George getting together to talk about how they have nothing to talk about, oh man, that just put it in my head. I really wish we got to see that conversation rather than hear about it. And we barely heard about it. They could have swapped out. Here we go. We could do a little swapping of screen time here. If we could have cut out some of the Gavin Polone stuff droning on about his Bell's palsy or, all the stuff in the plane or Kramer's drawn out breakup, there could have been a nice little tight JLD and Jason Alexander scene, about them needing to figure out this problem that they have. And they're such a great comedic combo together. That would have just been a great scene. I know it. All right, so let's take a quick break and I will see you on the other side. I can't believe it was the sister in the attic. I didn't see that coming. I know, such a brilliant twist. Best movie I've seen in a while. Julie? Oh my God, Audrey! I didn't see you there. Were you just talking about Big Fire of Little Lies? Well, we were going to see that movie together, you and me. You told me it was saved for me. I'm sorry. It's just, Kelly wanted to see it, and... Did you save it for Kelly? No, you saved it for me. Fine. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. What? A lawyer? That's right, Julie. A lawyer. I'm Brody Candybag, and I specialize in the sanctity of verbal contracts when it comes to saving movies. Sharing a movie experience should not be taken lightly. I have seen how devastating it can be when one breaches that sacred agreement. You may not think it's a big deal, but
Spoiler alert, your friendship won't recover. Next time you've been screwed over by somebody because they just had to see the movie before you could nail down a time, call me, Brody Candybag. I'll get you the settlement you deserve. I've gotten my clients movie theater gift cards, a year's supply of Juji fruit, and countless refillable tubs of movie popcorn complete with butter flavoring. The magic of movies is a time-honored tradition, so don't play with someone's emotions by saving a movie and then bailing. Otherwise, you'll have to deal with me, Brody Candybag. I don't care if you have your ticket stub, you're gonna pay for what you've done.
And we're back. There were 0 extras for this episode. Okay, well, technically there were notes about nothing, but they were truly about nothing. There was nothing I felt warranted a mention on the podcast. So we're just going to skip to Contributor Corner. Greg sent in some thoughts this week. He says, first off, I don't like this episode. It feels like a season 1 storyline, and there's not a lot of humor here that is truly funny. It's as if someone who had never written for the show before jumped in to write what they think a Seinfeld episode would be. Coming off the pen, which is a classic episode, this one is completely forgettable. I don't buy the whole premise of a guy having someone who they just met watch their dog as if there's nobody he knows he can call when they land. I hate the dialogue in almost every scene. Why would Elaine ask if Jerry picks up the dog shit? Of course he does, because that's what you do when you have a dog. And the fact that she finds it so hilarious just makes no sense to me. Well, we're on the same page again, Greg. This episode is not a great one. Yeah, the dialogue isn't anything really great. It's certainly not like Seinfeld caliber. And although Larry David did write the episode, yeah, I can see what you mean, where it feels like someone just came in and said, I'm going to try my best. And it's almost like a bizarro writer writing it. But again, I totally agree. It's not great. And I did like that she found it hilarious because I think she's asking, even though she knows the answer, I think she's asking because she's just so amused knowing how Jerry is and how fastidious. Picking up dog poop would be the last thing Jerry would ever want to do. So I could see her just asking for the sake of him having to admit it. So I actually did enjoy that part of it. Next, Greg says, Kramer's breakup scene played to the camera is so over the top and annoying, yet they include this in every retrospective of the series. It's not funny. I agree. I've never thought it's funny. I appreciate the energy that Michael Richards brings to it, but yeah, I've never thought it was funny either. And you're right. I don't know why it's always included in the clip episodes. It's never been funny to me. Next, Greg says, I do like the dynamic of Elaine and George together and how they're only friends-in-law, as Elaine describes it. I like how they find common ground in gossiping about Jerry since they both know him so well. This awkwardness goes away after this season as they hang out more and more often, but I like that it's shown here to be awkward. Right. And again, glossing over the whole, well, they did have a scene before where they were plotting together and having fun together. It wasn't awkward. I think this is the best plot of the episode, and it is relatable, like I said earlier. So, and again, they're such great actors that they make it really work, and you could feel that uncomfortable vibe, but also mixed in with that, they don't want to offend each other either. Like, I just don't want to, they're both feeling the same way. Like, I don't want to just hang out with you, but yet they don't want to admit that. And ultimately, I do kind of feel like it's sweet that Elaine wants to get to the bottom of it. I just wish we had seen the scene of her getting together with George to talk about it. And finally, Greg says, there isn't much more to say about this episode since I don't like it. JLD holds her own with what she's given to work with, which was not much. I do like that at first she feels sympathetic for the dog and then in one night learns to hate it. But that didn't save this blah storyline. The funniest thing in the whole episode is the name Farfel for a dog. I always thought that was weird too. Farfel? Oh, God, I think they did explain where Farfel came from in the notes about nothing. And sorry, guys, it was so boring to me. And it was actually a little torturous to watch this episode another time through just to watch it with the notes. Maybe this is where Elaine's opinion of dogs made the turn. I mean, I know it was very specific to Farfel, her hatred for this one dog, but maybe this night at Jerry's place kind of just turned her off from all dogs. And yeah, no, I don't blame you, Greg. There's really not much to say for this episode. But thank you so much for sending in thoughts. And if you would like to become a contributor to Hot and Heavy, please email me at elainepodcast@gmail.com. That's elainepodcast@gmail.com. My favorite Elaine moments, well, there's not a lot to choose from. I think Greg said it really well, where JLD holds her own. I mean, it's not great material for sort of anyone in this episode, but, she does what she does with it, and it's perfectly fine. But if I were to pick a moment, I would say it's when she remembers that Jerry likes morning thunder tea. I kind of like how she smiles really big and says, Jerry likes morning thunder. And that moment through when she says, God, I feel great. I like that. That was probably my favorite moment in a very blah episode. And well, getting into my final notes, blah episode, I actually call this a must-miss episode of Seinfeld. Definitely one I skip over and never revisit. None of the storylines are compelling, and I just can't stand the stupid dog stuff. And now that I know it's a voiceover actor doing the barking, I mean, no offense to whoever did it, but like they couldn't have just gotten a dog to bark. I just feel like the barking of that dog, the sound of it, is so awful and so annoying. Oh, well, it's not a great episode, and I am happy to move on to the next one. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time.